Well, thanks. I feel inspired today, and my notes really reflect some of the quotes from previous speakers, actually. So what I'd like to talk with you about today is the Flannery Centre that we're building in Bathurst. We're aiming for this to be a centre for community response, a regional centre for community response to some of the issues that we've been hearing about today. And I do want to spend a little bit of time just going over some of the drivers of why we're building this centre, and then to explore a little bit what we aim to achieve within it. What you saw before was the artist's impression of what it looked like. This is what it looked like a few weeks ago, so we're under construction. So a lot of what I'm talking about today is the things that we're aiming to put in place. One of the key elements, and I'll go through these quite quickly, was that we wanted the building itself to talk about a positive future. And part of that is to try and design it so that it's incredibly energy efficient. And part of that is to get the glazing and thermal mass balance right and work with some of the best agencies in Australia to do the energy modelling for this. As you can feel on a day like today, heating the building with winter sun is a good idea. This is how we hope it'll look. Okay, so the key issues for us fall into four areas. Population, I like alliteration, so we've got 4 Ps. Pollution, peaks and planetary boundaries. And other speakers have talked about this in different guises as the morning's gone on. What we say, or what we came to the realization was, as an organization that trains people in the vocational space, is that generally the community has a very low ecological literacy to understand these challenges. I think actually Michael referred to it as systemic blindness. It's part of the same facet. So what we're aiming to do is create a centre where we're selling the message that life needs to thrive on a finite planet. Not just human life, and as we've seen today, our interrelationship with the natural world is something that we need to re-engage with, particularly those of us who live in country towns or in cities. So rather like Michael just described, our role here is to try and inspire, lead and learn our way into a positive future. I think one of the things I've enjoyed this morning is just the recurrence of hope. We look at all the things that frighten us and that we must do something about, but the only way that we're going to do anything about that is if we can chart a course to the future. Our cunning plan in this is to try and provide some clarity about the issues that we face, and work with the business community, particularly small business. That's what we've specialised in over the last few years. We employ about 1,200 apprentices each year, working with 500-600 local businesses to do so. So we're really a nuts and bolts type organisation, trying to grow the skills from the bottom up, rather than a kind of top-down approach. We need both, but our role in this is bottom up. Adopting sustainable practice as an individual or a business, and develop a range of programs and services that are different to the offer that's out there in other organisations, which we see as completely complementary, but there's many niches, there's a big task ahead of us. We've mentioned this today. I go to this website to find out how we're ticking over. We almost had our 7th birthday, didn't we, in conjunction with today. I think in about 3 or 4 weeks, there will be 7 billion of us on the planet. It's been mentioned a couple of times. I mention it again because it's just not trivial. And what's not trivial about it was, when I was born, there was roughly half as many, or less than half as many as there are now. And I'm feeling a bit jaded, but that wasn't so long ago. When in 1982, when I finished my degree and was thinking about coming to Australia, and our organisation was formed, we had about 4.6 billion people on the planet. And it is not just the raw numbers, it is the fact that increasingly we're living in cities, the 50 million farmers that are moving to cities or the slums on the outside of them, that the level of consumption that people expect They would like to have 1/5 of our consumption in most parts of the world, but are at much lower levels than that at the moment, and aspire to the types of lives that we have. And essentially, we've reached that threshold where the Holocene period is being replaced by the Anthropocene, where us as human beings are changing the balance of life on Earth and the way that the systems work. And I think there's no better example of this than having a look at Shenzhen. In 1982, when the organization was born, and there were 4.6 billion people on the planet. When we talk about our impacts, we've largely replaced plants and animals with ourselves. And this is a double-edged sword for Australia, of course, because there's quite a bit of Western Australia in these buildings in terms of iron ore that got turned into steel. And there's quite a bit of coal going to power these many cities like this that have grown up in China. And in the country, I just don't think we have a sense of that. Most of the people that I work with just do not have a sense of just how fundamental and fast-moving these changes are. So when we talk about pollution, one of the ecological literacy things which you would learn in school but quickly forget is everything has an equal and opposite reaction. And our view is that businesses that rely on polluting for free just need to change their business model. It's as simple as that. We don't allow CFCs in the atmosphere anymore. We don't allow Hardys to produce asbestos anymore. And there's a certain inevitability to the fact that we need to move away from business models that where they jump up and down, I won't be able to make my profits if I have to pay for my pollution. And I think we're seeing quite a bit of that in the debate, a kind of tantrum type. We've got loads of money and we're going to argue against it. But the bare reality is that 2010 was the year where we had our biggest pollution problem in terms of carbon dioxide, 30.6 gigatons of carbon dioxide, which equates to the 8 tons of pure carbon that was talked about earlier. And frankly, our ability to try and limit warming to the kind of globally accepted 2 degrees is rapidly evaporating, if indeed we stand any chance of doing it at all. 4 degrees rise is much more likely. So the peaks associated with us spreading ourselves and replacing everything else with us on the planet is leading, as we know we've got a finite planet, but we are now butting up against some of the peaks associated with that. The first thing that will become abundantly clear to all of us within the next 2 to 3 years is peak oil. What we imagine peak oil, this is the point at which oil production starts to diminish. And what we imagine a few years in the future is that it will ferret out all of the weaknesses in our economic and political systems. And government's ability to deliver on the social contract with people. In China, it's we have to give them growth to be able to raise living standards, because otherwise, frankly, they won't put up with our repressive regime. So the ability to ferret out all of our weaknesses, we'll start to see breakdowns in the social contract. And we would expect to see, for example, large numbers of the population revolting against governments because they weren't getting their fair share. Largely young people revolting against repressive governments. And then I thought, well, this is not years in the future. This is the news stories this year. This is the Arab Spring. This is London and Manchester. It's on. And there's quite a bit of analysis to say that what actually tipped us into the global financial crisis, apart from moral bankruptcy of the financial system itself, was oil at $140 a barrel. And the inability of people to be able to drive to work on the outskirts of those American towns where they where they relied on a car that they could no longer fill with expensive fuel. This is just one of a number of peaks. We saw the phosphate production before. We've heard about peaks in fresh water availability. We've heard about the peak in arable land and productive systems. Basically, we're facing peak everything. I don't want to be too bleak about this, but we need to get a handle on it, because otherwise we won't be able to learn our way to a positive future. And it does require a fundamental readjustment to the way that we view ourselves. And the fact that we're sticking security behind words like food and energy is part of that adjustment. The resilience thinking raises that concept of a safe operating space. And the Stockholm Resilience Institute has put out an analysis of planetary boundaries, which I won't go into here, except to say that anywhere that there is a red line here means that we are moving outside of the safe operating space for humanity. So the world will, of course, be fine in the very long term, but our ability as human beings to live on it, along with a lot of other life forms, is severely compromised. So this is not part of our general debate, and it certainly isn't part of a course that an apprentice gets taught. And yet, we need to have this kind of broad-based understanding, because we won't otherwise have the foundation skills to know what to do, or why these policies are being put in place, or what is it that we can do as individuals or business owners that can make a difference. Okay, so we looked at all of that and thought, well, that's a little daunting. We're going to have to talk about a whole lot of things at the Flannery Centre. And Tim Flannery was kind enough to lend his name to what is otherwise just a building and an intent. And here's how we're proposing to start. We are looking to try and affect the way that the built environment is put together. The largest number of apprentices that we employ are in the building and construction industry. And we're looking for best practice in residential construction. And our cunning plan here is to work with local people who are at the forefront of sustainable construction. And we work with Mick Fabar from Green Homes Australia in Orange. And we are forming a green trade group, a green tick for business processes and businesses involved in the construction industry. And we're working on a My Green Home assessment tool, all of the things that you would need to take into account if you were going to build a sustainable home. We do this because 40% of the energy we consume is in our built environment. Agriculture and natural landscapes is an area that we haven't had a large amount of experience in, because over the last 15 years, young people have largely moved away from careers on the land, which is an emerging crisis for us. We need to construct a fairer deal for farming businesses that pay businesses at a rate that, one, allows them to manage the soil sustainably and grow the soils, and two, attract young people into that lifestyle. And so we want to be part of that space. Individual behaviour, once we know this stuff, we really must act on it. And there are examples in this room of people doing just that. We're aiming to put together a community program, a very low-cost program that will draw on experts from the community to be able to really show people what they're doing and how to adapt to a better way of living. And similarly, business practices don't do the sorts of things that Mike was talking about in the previous presentation. Don't generally, particularly if you're a small business, very rarely take time to do formal planning. And very rarely, there's a lot of reactivity in that. And frankly, that's not going to be fit for purpose for the challenges that we face. So what we're looking to do is establish peer-to-peer relationships, find the leaders in our community, of which we're actually quite a good example here today, people who do have a deeper understanding and greater analysis and who are putting new models into practice, and buddy them up. with other people who need to go, because that's our approach, a kind of bottom-up approach. Find the gems in our community who can tell this message, because frankly, one of the things that's difficult in the current debate is nobody likes being told what to do. And I did a talk for a club, and they said, "Geez, mate, you got any good news?" Yeah, we're here, and we're here to help. So one of the things we want to use the building for is to provide exhibitions of where businesses have adapted new practice, and to tell the story that it is possible, and to convey the hope that we all require. And of course, there is extension skills training. Some of it might be a little bit back to the future, actually, if you think about it. We've got into a pattern of skills which involve plugging something in when it fails to work, stick a computer in to work out which bit isn't working, chuck it away. We actually think that might be a business model of the past. We think we might actually have to fix things again. A sort of high-tech 1950s, you know. And we want to be a hub of community response. We don't have the answers. We're just in the business of linking people together who do. So in terms of just getting back to the actual building itself, we're aiming for 6-star Green Star construction for education. There are a few 6-star Green Star buildings commercial, but they are massively expensive. And what we want to do in the education space is try and build something that's an exemplar of how all buildings in our climate should be built. So ultra low energy use. And we have started, I know it's probably not very fashionable today, but we have started carbon offset projects, but in East Timor, taking the approach rather like SBS, when they say in our region, they mean Southeast Asia, and buddying up with the very poorest communities, so that the triple bottom line of the money going to those communities and the tree plantings and the ability to put it all together has multiple benefits. And it's a facility that's open to all. So we're hoping that this time next year that we will be able to host the next version of these TED Talks. So thanks very much.